Hi everybody, this is Kevin, and welcome back to another video. And today, I would like to rank all of the Trails games from my least to most favorite, now that I have finally finished Trails into Reverie. And really, ever since I finished that game, I've had a number of people ask me to put together a tier list, or ask what my favorite Trails game is. And the thing of it is, that's almost impossible to do. Even putting together this ranking, which turned out to be a top 10, because luckily from Trails in the Sky first chapter to Reverie, there happens to be 10 games. But even still, as I looked it over one last time before recording this video, I'm scratching my head, what's that game doing at the bottom? And then I realized, oh, because those games are at the top. And looking at my top 4 games on this list, I can honestly make the case that each of them is my favorite. But I chose the order I did for a reason. I feel a video is better than just doing a run-of-the-mill tier list because I can properly explain myself. And I welcome all of you to please leave a comment down below with your ranking of least to most favorite Trails games. But if that's too difficult for you, then perhaps a top 3 or top 5, whatever. Just please leave a comment down below. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I love every single game in this series. It's my favorite series of all time now, and this is only my first playthrough. I know for a fact, after I replay this series, and especially after I play Trails Through Daybreak, Daybreak 2, Koto no Kiseki 2, Kai no Kiseki, I'm going to have to revise this list. But as of right now, this is where things stand. So without further ado, let's start with my least favorite Trails game, number 10 on my list, and that is reluctantly the first Trails of Cold Steel game. Now, this probably falls in line with the general consensus because I do understand this is a pretty divisive title. I always found it funny as I played through the series last year, and, you know, I was gushing how much I love the Sky Trilogy, how much I love Zero and Azure, and I always got comments from people saying, oh, those games are great, but once you get to Cold Steel, it's gonna fall off. And you see, I do have Cold Steel 1 at the bottom, but I couldn't disagree more. I honestly love the comfy slice-of-life aspect of this game, how we're just going to the military academy and forming bonds of the characters, not only in Class 7, but the other students, like Reem's rival Patrick, and other characters who show up later on, like Lind and Vivi, Rex, Mint, all the instructors, of course, Instructor Sarah, Vice Principal Heinrich, the #1 Risha Mao fan, just all these excellent characters. It's such a comfy game. And the thing of it is, the Cold Steel arc needs this game to get things going. And I think Cold Steel probably benefits the most from that, in that there's 4, technically 5 games if we count Reverie. So with Sky, you have 3 games. With Crossbell, you have 2 games, but again, sort of technically 3 with Reverie. And you can even say, you know, Cold Steel 3 and 4 kind of work in with Crossbell with the returning characters. But yeah, Cold Steel 1 definitely benefits from having so many games to have the characters grow, so that it needs the 90-hour prologue. And, you know, it does feel like Cold Steel 1 and 2 is its own game, similar to how 3 and 4 is its own game that was just split into 2. And again, despite me ranking this at the bottom, I love Trails of Cold Steel 1, but I just love all the other games that much more. So that's why I have it ranked where I do. Moving on to number 9, we have Trails of Cold Steel 2. Again, what I just said, I love Trails of Cold Steel 2. I really do. I love it more than the first Cold Steel game, but I love every other game more than Cold Steel 2. And this game is just fantastic, how it takes the epic cliffhanger of Cold Steel 1, runs with it. You have to find your friends, you get new allies, new party members. That's another thing too, how like all the Trails games just improve the combat system. Like, the combat system was already improved from Azure to Cold Steel 1, and then from Cold Steel 1 to 2, you get Overdrive and all these new link attacks and just all sorts of crazy stuff. Improved crafts, improved courts, and it's just an excellent game. Some of the characters who weren't really as fleshed out in the first game, like Emma was really mysterious in the first Cold Steel game, gets more fleshed out in Cold Steel 2, and then Emma goes on to eventually become my favorite waifu in the Trails series, without a doubt, man. Emma, best girl. But yeah, I have to put Cold Steel 1 and 2 near the bottom. Again, very reluctantly. I love all these games. I know I keep saying that, but I have to keep saying that. So let's move on to number 8. And before moving on, let me just say this as well. My favorite part of Trails of Cold Steel 2 is actually after the finale, the Occupation of Crossbelt chapter, where you play as Lloyd Bannings and Risha Mao. And while the earlier games gave you a taste of that, specifically in Zero and Azure, when you had Estelle, Joshua, Ren, Kevin, Reese, Olivier, Gileath Osborne, Lecter, Chloe, all these characters show up. But then, finally, in Cold Steel 2, which, yeah, you can play as Estelle and Joshua in Zero, but then in Cold Steel 2, you get a whole chapter controlling Lloyd and Risha. You see Sal Lee, you see Grace and Reigns, you see Cope and Mimi, you hear the Geofront theme, you hear Get Over the Barrier as the battle theme. So awesome. That was my favorite part of Trails of Cold Steel 2. And we'll elaborate more on that later on down the list. So let's move on to number 8. We have the game that started it all, Trails in the Sky First Chapter. I really thought about putting this game near the bottom, below the first Cold Steel game, but I had to rank this higher than Cold Steel 1 and 2 because of the sentimental value of this game. This is the game that started it all. And I've heard stories from people where, you know, they start this game, oh, it's too slow, it doesn't pick up to the very end, and then you dive into Sky Second Chapter. I can still vividly remember the first day I played this game. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was off from work. I played this game for 8 hours. Not 8 hours straight, 8 hours throughout the whole day. And fell in love with it. I love the whole comfy atmosphere. It just feels like an old school RPG. And again, it did come out in 2004 in Japan. So it does have that feel. I mean, it's over 20 years old now. But it just has that comfy feel to it. It's hard to explain unless you play the game yourself. I fell in love with it right away. I knew this series was special, and look at me now. I've almost gone insane down the Trails rabbit hole. Not really much more to elaborate on. As you see, I have, you know, obviously Sky Second Chapter and the third will be higher than Sky First Chapter, but it is what it is. And an interesting thing you're going to note here is a lot of the first arcs are near the bottom. As we move on to number 7, which is Trails from Zero. I should have saved that for as I moved here. But anyway, Trails from Zero, the start of the Crossbelt arc. Let me just say this. Lloyd Bannings is my favorite protagonist in the entire Trails series. I love this dude. Just the never give up attitude. Get over the barrier. Seize the truth. And stand up again and again. If you get that reference, you get that reference. If not, I guess I can explain the comments to people who don't get it. But if you know, you know. And Lloyd Bannings is the man, the legend himself. And what I love so much about Trails from Zero, and why as the first entry in the arc, I have it ranked above Cold Steel 1 and Sky First Chapter, is because I love the special support section so much. As a group, I think they work the best. And while people complain a lot, oh, there's so many characters in the Cold Steel games, I do think that I love all the characters later on, especially in Cold Steel 4 and Reverie. But as far as this game goes, the early entries, there's such a great balance between having the 4 characters in the special support section, Lloyd Bannings, Ellie McDowell, Tio Plateau, and Randy Orlando, and then you get some guest characters like, well, in this game, Yin, Noel, Doodles, Dudley, Estelle and Joshua. You get the idea. All these great characters who join you. Exploring Crossbell. Crossbell, for as comfy as Sky First Chapter is, Crossbell is just so much comfier. The music that plays in Crossbell is home, and I love it so much. But again, there are better games. So, moving right along to number 6, we have Trails of Cold Steel 3, which in my opinion is a better version of Trails of Cold Steel 1. And my reason for that is I love New Class 7. If you would have told me when I played Trails of Cold Steel 2 that Altina would end up being one of my favorite characters in the entire series, I would have been like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, it happened. And it happened as early as Trails of Cold Steel 3, especially when we got to that ending. But I love the dynamic of New Class 7. I think Falcom maybe listened to criticism back then of people saying, oh, old Class 7's got too many characters. Which I think they handle them better in Cold Steel 3 and 4 in that, they show up, like, who was it early on? It's Elliot, Fee, and Laura, right? They show up, and then some other characters, Elisa, Machias, and Emma show up later on. You get the idea. You get old Class 7 showing up, but then the whole dynamic of new Class 7 being there, so it's easier to work with a smaller group of characters, and I think they all fit in quite well with Yuna, Kurt, Altina, Muse, Ash, and Instructor Reen, which I prefer Instructor Reen as opposed to Student Reen. I just think it fits him better. Loved it. Moving on to number 5. We have Trails in the Sky second chapter. I know people are probably getting a little confused about this list now because this might be top 3 for a lot of people. But as you can tell, there's another Sky game I prefer to first chapter and second chapter. And this game, again, fantastic. I mean, if these other games were on this list, this is like, even without the other games, this is all-time great. Absolutely fantastic how it picks up right where first chapter left off, the cliffhanger ending, learning about Ouroboros and Weissman and Joshua leaving, Estelle going on her adventure to find Joshua, the music. As soon as I heard Looking Up at the Sky as the overworld theme, I sat there for like 10 minutes just listening to it, like, dude, this is peak. And I don't use that word often because I don't really like it. I'd rather use the word Kino. This is Kino, Looking Up at the Sky. And the other songs you hear, The Dream Continues, Learning the Truth About Hamel, Louve, one of the great characters which people who skip out on the Sky games and then hear Louve mentioned in Cold Steel 3, Cold Steel 4, Reverie. They mentioned Louve in Zero and Azure when Estelle and Joshua show up again in Ren. They don't know who Louve is, like the people who played the Sky games know who Louve is. An all-time great character. The Enforcer theme, just incredible. Love this game. Love this game so much. But again, there's some better games. As we move on to number 4. Trails in the Sky the Third. Remember what I said at the start of the video where I can make the top 4? I can make the case for each of them being number 1. And I've often said to people that, who ask me on a whim, what's your favorite Trails game? Trails in the Sky the Third. And the reason why I say that is because this is, without a doubt, the most underrated of all the Trails games. I've heard so many people say, oh, it's a filler game, you can just skip it, who's this Kevin guy, who cares, Estelle and Joshua's story is over, just move on. No, this game is probably the most important game in the entire series as far as the other plot points that come afterward that continue in Zero and Azure. The entire Cold Steel arc, brought up again in Cold Steel 4, in Reverie. Sky the Third is the Grandmaster. Dude, the theme that plays for the Grandmaster in Sky the Third plays again in Cold Steel 4 and Reverie. It started in Sky the Third, the final choice. I mean, people associate that song with Cold Steel with Olivier. I kind of think Lyrical Amber is more of Olivier's theme, but the final choice is another one. That's kind of like the Olivier Osborne rivalry theme. Not the rivalry, but their rivalry, if you know what I'm saying. I love Sky the Third so much, and the story is incredible. The entire story with Kevin, Reese, and Rufina overcoming your demons, moving forward in life, an incredible story. I love it. It's a shame that really Kevin, he had more than a glorified cameo in Azure. He was pretty important in Azure. But, he had his minor appearance in Cold Steel 4, and then Estelle says, oh, that's the 5th Merkaba. Kevin and Reese are here too. And that's all we've seen of Kevin since. I just hope he appears again in, Koto no Kiseki 1 and 2. I don't know if he does or not, because I haven't played them. But definitely Kai no Kiseki, please. We need to see Kevin and Reese again. He's such a great character, such an excellent story. I love the doors. Really, the doors in Sky the Third is what went on to become Trails into Reverie, which you'll see later on. Reverie is obviously higher on my list, but I love that, getting a glimpse of the characters past, especially the one with Estelle and Joshua when they were younger, Elector with Chloe and Lucy, the Grandmaster, as I mentioned before, where we learned what even is the Phantasmal Blaze Plan, Ren, Stardor 15, if you know, you know. Excellent game. A masterpiece, an underrated masterpiece, the most underrated of all the Trails games. And when people ask me on a whim, what's your favorite Trails game, I'll always say Sky the Third, just to hear their reaction, because, as we go further here, I'll explain why my number one's my number one. But I do feel this is the most underrated Trails game, overlooked by everyone. People say it's filler. It's not. It's the most important Trails game, in my opinion. Absolutely loved it. Let's move on to number 3, which is the most recent game, Trails into Reverie. Man, I didn't want recency bias to blind me with this game, so I put it here at number 3, but I could have put this one at number 1 as well. I loved the route system. I think, again, Falcom learned from, maybe their previous mistake, if you want to call it that, or maybe fan criticism, in that, oh, there's too many characters in Cold Steel 4, let's do something about that. And they did the 3 separate routes with Reen, Lloyd, and C, and let me tell you, man, as I said before, Lloyd's my favorite, but C, what a legend, what an excellent character C is in this game, and the people who join him, specifically Swin, Nadia, Lapis, the other miserable sinners, the Imperial Picnicking Front, whatever you want to call them. Excellent cast of characters. I love what they did there. I love the Reverie corridor, building your dream team of whichever characters you want. Although there should have been more characters. There should have been Annalise and Alan Richard and Mior, Julia, all the other characters they skipped out on for whatever reason. They all should have been in the Reverie corridor as well, especially Freddy. He should have been in there, and Dudley, and Cedric, and all, you know. I'm going a little crazy now, but you understand why. I love this game, fantastic, and after finishing it, especially watching those last 3 daydreams, I am so excited for Trails Through Daybreak, and I can't wait. So let's move on to number 2, which is Trails to Azure. I love this game, man. As I said before, Crossbell has to be the comfiest of all the locations you visit in these games as far as the hub worlds go. You really grow to love all the NPCs, talking to them after each side quest and, getting little bits of lore. And again, as Sky the Third set up all these future events, the Phantasmal Blaze Plan, it carries over into Azure, where Ouroboros gets involved again for the first time since 2nd chapter, and I guess you can say the 3rd as well, but they get involved again. You see Campanella, you see the debut of other members of Ouroboros like Novartis, the 6th Anguis, the 7th Anguis, Aryan Road, the Star Ritter, Duvalie the Swift, top 5 character in the entire series, absolutely. Yeah, I love Trails to Azure. The game, it starts off like the first chapter is kind of slow, but it never stops. The revelations at the end where you learn the truth of the rainy day. Oh my god, the heartbeat, incredible. Love it. I absolutely love it. And again, I could put this at number 1 as well. But my number 1 favorite game in the entire series has to be Trails of Cold Steel 4. And this game, again, as I said at the very beginning of this whole video, how Cold Steel benefits from having so many games, 4, technically 5 games. This is the culmination of such an epic arc. The way Cold Steel 3 ends with its cliffhanger ending, how everything seems like all hope is lost. What are we going to do from here? I love how Yuna takes the role as the main protagonist for at least the first, third of the game. You have to find your friends again. The rescue mission for Reen. Celine, another best girl, goes hand in hand with Emma being best girl. The reason why Duvalie becomes best girl is in this game. Oh my god, such an excellent game. So many great moments. I know people get on about how there's too many characters, but to me, the story works so well in that every major event, it tells you, okay, these 3 are mandatory for the party, but the other characters, you can bring whoever you want. So every character has their use. And again, I think Falcom either listened to criticism or learned from their mistake. And then they had the root system with Reverie, with the 3 characters being split up that way. And, you know, they learn, and they'll be curious to see what happens with Daybreak and the other games, how they handle that, especially because knowing what I know at the end of Reverie, Reen's definitely coming back. Like, all these characters are going to come back in one form or another, so I guess they'll have to do another Reverie-type game for that. But, you know, I was crying my eyes out at the end of this game with both endings, and beautiful ending to the game. I loved it. I love, too, how while it just goes, there are so many epic moments, it does have its moments of tranquility, especially when you have the bonding events of the characters. And for that, it's number 1. Like I said, the top 4 games, Cold Steel 4, Azure, Reverie, and especially Sky the Third, they could all be interchanged for number 1. I think I made most of my case for Sky the Third, but I just feel so strongly about that one, probably because it's so underrated. But, you know, that's my list, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thought in the comments down below. Again, please leave your ranking down below, or your favorite games, your least favorite games, whatever you want to do. If you disagree with my list, if you agree. And again, I will reiterate once again, I love every single game in this series. I can't get enough of the Trail series. I can't stop talking about it, obviously. I mean, how many videos have I even done on the Trail series now? It has to be at least 30, maybe even more. I've done so many. And you better believe I'll continue with Trails 2 Daybreak. I gotta think about how I'm gonna do that. I'll definitely have to do an initial thoughts video, but maybe I can talk about each chapter. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a comment down below, and stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Everybody have a great day, and peace out.
That's what you get for messing with this hottie.
Nighty night, kitty cats. Nighty night.